Anyone who turns to section 87 of the Doctrine and Covenants will find a very extraordinary prophecy. A prophecy consisting of 4 struggles of humanity, 3 of them wars: the American Civil War of 1861, World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. Some point out that Joseph Smith just copied a newspaper written 10 days before, but that newspaper must have been written by Marty McFly, because it obviously told of when the South called Britain to come into the war. During the war, Great Britain sent war supplies to the CSA, specifically when the British built the CSS Alabama, a commerce raider for the South to raid Union ports, and again when the British sent officers to inspect the South's cause to see if the war effort was worth joining. For a modern-day reference, see the movie Gettysburg. The British did not sympathize either side of the war the way Canada did. They needed cotton and materials from the South that the North couldn't provide for them. The French were also called upon by both the North and South. The French, however, leaned toward the South, for they needed the southern agriculture as well. This caused Britain to be a little more friendly toward France, who had declared war on Mexico, with the objective of gaining a foothold in North America to begin preparations to mount an American offensive. Support for this offensive was dropped after key Union victories. France, who had pulled in many other nations, even Austria, Spain, Belgium, Great Britain and colonial Sudan, Egypt. Already, war is spilling out upon all nations, but I don't think this was what Joseph Smith was talking about. If Great Britain hadn't become diplomatically friendly with the French, they would have been far too reluctant to accept the call of Russia during the Second Austrian War of Succession, as I call it, or World War I as you do, and the Triple Entente wouldn't have been formed, as Great Britain would have to join with France against the Triple Alliance. In Doctrine and Covenants section 87 verse 5, we read, "And it shall come to pass that the remnants who are left of the land will marshal themselves and become exceedingly angry, and shall vex the Gentiles with a sore vexation." This is obviously a reference to the rise of Hitler, when the remnants of Germany were suppressed greatly under the terms of the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, even to demilitarize the Rhineland and to minimize their military. The Germans invaded Czechoslovakia and Austria in 1938 and 1939. I don't think I need to explain the rest. But it states that after the war, the inhabitants of the earth shall mourn because of the bloodshed. I believe this is a reference to the Cold War, where the nations were too weak to fight, so they orally fought because of all the tension brought about by the world wars. But, if I am wrong there, about the Cold War, we must remember Thomas Paine's words from his book, Common Sense. Know that because one is not wrong doesn't give it a license to be right. Later in verse 5, it speaks of natural disasters, plague, and famine. The plagues and famine can be widely found during the decolonization period, a result of World War II, where both Africa and Asia were widely abandoned by their European occupiers, leaving them to govern themselves, causing famine, and in some cases, plague in mainly the regions of Indochina and Asia and Ivory Coast, with its surrounding regions being affected by this in Africa. For the other natural disasters, just turn on the news. As you can see, close examination of all the verses, not just a narrow view of half a verse, will you end up with the answer. Good day and God bless.